well, thanks everybody for dealing with my sloppy playing. I think that kind of gives you a good idea of all the different sounds that are in here. Yeah, I mean, this, like, really, I designed it to really be as many plexi tones as you can possibly get. So, I mean, obviously with all 10s, because Eddie Van Halen had a stock plexi that he would just crank. That was the whole sound. Variac came in a little bit, but I think if you'll notice, whenever I play the Variac, it actually isn't like a big effect. It's definitely more of a feel than it is a... it's definitely more of a feel than it is an actual sound, and whenever you turn it up, you definitely feel it. There's lots of videos on YouTube, actually. I think Rick Beato and Pete Thorne actually do a couple of videos showing like actual plexis, and the Variac really doesn't have the same effect that I think a lot of people think it does. I think they think it's supposed to be just all fuzzed out and gnarly and whatnot, and it's really not. It's more of a feel thing, because the whole idea was not to necessarily to affect the sound. It was really he couldn't play in clubs with a dimed out Marshall, and so that's really where all 10s comes in. Is we wanted you to give the opportunity to just dime it all the way across. And I'll reference Pete Thorne again with this particular sound, because there actually is a video at like GitCon or something where Pete Thorne is playing a dimed plexi and a bunch of people do it. And so that video is really helpful, because obviously I don't have the capacity to just fully dime a plexi in suburban Texas. It just isn't going to work out. So that's really where that comes in. I think I've gotten a lot of questions on the Jose versus Eddie switch, and really what this is meant to be is more of a stock and modded kind of switch. So down in the Eddie section, so Eddie used a stock amp, so it is stock in the down section, so that's where you're actually going to get. So I'm playing clean right now through, you can see I'm got an IR going into just a little Boss Katana head, so it's clean. And so then we add this, and so this is going to be your cleanest, because this is going to be your stock. So I'm going to turn it down a little bit. But this is where you're going to get that classic rock that... And actually, it does clean up well, because it's the nice thing about JFETs is they do react like tubes. And then when I roll my volume down, so I mean, that is kind of the nice part about that. So with the stock versus mod, I think there's kind of a misconception. There is a video, again, Pete Thorne going through Marshall. Pete Thorne is so helpful with vintage Marshall tones. It's really kind of nice to have him at our disposal. But you can see there, he actually had Mick Mars's Jose modded Marshall, and that's really what this sound is modeled after, is Mick Mars's modified Jose, and it really isn't that much gain that's added to it. And I mean, really what it kind of comes down to is, whenever you have a Jose modded Marshall, you don't have to run it fully cranked. When you run a Marshall fully cranked, you have power amp and transformer saturation, and you've just got lots of ooey gushiness within the amp. But when you had a Jose mod, so that you could get gain without having to do that. So it really is not necessarily saying more gain, it's just different flavors. So like if we, we'll crank the gain so you can hear it a little more apparent, but just... So the Jose mod is definitely, it's tighter, it's more responsive, and the stock mod is going to be a little squishier. It's going to sound like it's more gain, but really what it is it's just more low end. I mean, that's really the reason why fuzz pedals sound the way that they do. It's like take a tube treble booster, for example. The treble booster is it is a fuzz pedal, and if you change the bass settings on a tube or on a treble booster, it turns into like a fuzz face. So more bass equals more, or the perception of more gain. And so really what that Jose is it's adding a gain stage, but it's cutting bass to make it more responsive. So that's where you get the... So that's really where you get into those kind of sounds. So like I said, running into an IR, this is originally the reason, the actual application that I intended for this. In my opinion, just digital effects have gotten so good that, really there's no point in us analog guys trying to do anything, because, digital just is going to do it better. The one thing that I was just really dissatisfied with is any digital drive pedal. Now, I haven't tried the Strymon stuff. The Strymon stuff's supposed to be really good, but any digital drive stuff, it just missed the attack or the response. It just never had that real amp feel to it, the same way that like just a regular distortion pedal would. And I think that whenever I discovered like the JHS Angry Charlie or the Friedman BEOD, and it was a pedal that sounded like an amp, and that's what inspired me to really get into this. It's like, wow, okay, I can have all these different sounds, but with pedals, and it's generally the same kind of feel. And so there you go. So I've got it running in the effects loop of the HX Stomp. I'll bypass this and go directly into the Katana, because I did have questions on how it sounded with the solid state amp. And so we'll get into that. I did want to cover the general control. So we already covered the switches and the variac control. Gain and volume are pretty obvious. But really what I wanted to do with the high and low is these are not the standard Marshall tone stack. Standard Marshall tone stack comes after the last gain stage, and it really is more of a cut, whereas these are active. I meant these to be more like your studio controls. So you listen to Van Halen 1, and Van Halen 1 is actually Van Halen 2 for that matter as well. Both of those albums are really bright. And a Marshall can be bright, but according to all the experts, it was a very warm amp. And he ran it through JBLs with a ton of reverb through Sunset Studios reverb that they had. I think it was either the chamber or the plate that they had, whichever. And that's really how you got a lot of that brightness from Eddie's amp. And they also cranked the treble on it, especially in the 5K range. Jim Gostad does a very thorough breakdown to show like all the different things that they did with the EQ to get Eddie's amp to sound the way. And so that's really where you saw whenever I was playing the Van Halen stuff is I'm going to crank that treble the same way, so of course all tens. I'm going to crank that treble in the presence the very same way that they would have done for the Van Halen 1 studio albums. So I hope it comes through on the camera, because it is that sound. When you run it through a 4x12, so like if you were to use this as like through a clean power amp or a clean tube amp, it is that sound. I can assure you. So yeah, that's kind of where, and these are active. So yeah, like rolling off is a cut, and rolling up is boost, and so that's that. The other, I think probably, even though this is a very fully featured pedal, I think the most important setting in this entire thing is the presence knob, and the reason for that is because I have it's a very wide sweep. So let me show you just how. So it's a very wide sweep on purpose. So So when you're running into the front of a clean amp, it's naturally going to brighten things up, especially if you have like a Fender or a Marshall. Vox has a little bit too much mid-range. I've tried these pedals with Voxes, so sorry Vox owners, but I'm just going to shoot myself in the foot and just say that I don't think it sounds very good, but I don't think a Vox sounds good to begin with, so I already lost business off of that. Well, sorry guys. I'll make a treble booster for you later, I promise. But really this presence control, you would wind it down as you're playing into a clean amp because it'll brighten things up. If you're playing into a power amp and you need a little more treble oomph to kind of get the power amp to really respond, right, you can turn this up. So I think you saw, again, playing the Van Halen stuff, is I did pull that treble up a little higher because running into the HX Stomp is going to be very similar. I don't have any amps on here. I mean, I've got the effects loop, which is where this is, and I have a delay, tape delay. This has been off. This is an Eventide thing, but at the end. But I mean, it really is just the Llano Estacado running into a EVH 412 impulse response, and this is just the standard Celestian. I think it's like a balance Sennheiser 412, or no, 421. I forget. Doesn't matter. Through a nice microphone, and then just into the Boss. And I mean that's really it. So real quick, I'll go ahead and give you some more sounds. I also had a lot of questions on how it sounds with a boost, and I know this is, people are going to freak out that I'm not using analog, but this just is easier to do it. So we're going to go to a Stupor OD, which is just a standard SD1, just tried and true drive, and let's see how it sounds. I'll try this down a little bit. Whoops. Yeah, let's get really gnarly with it. Yeah, I don't want the Variac. Give me some more bass though. It'll get you there, I mean, maybe not like a 5150, but it'll definitely yeah, it can hold its own, especially like if you're double tracking. I think a lot of people would be surprised at how little gain a lot of these like big metal bands use, because when you're double tracking, that gain kind of cascades into the signal, and like something like a 5150, like if you're double tracking, that gain is really down. Like y'all would be surprised. Anybody who's recorded, y'all know this. By the way, I never actually mentioned the guitar that I'm playing. So I am playing. You can see this here. This is a MJT Super Strat. If anybody's seen my videos before, seen it before. Alder body. Got a Gibson Dirty Fingers in there for now because love me some John Sykes. Not a very underrated guitar player. I don't know any of his Thin Lizzy stuff. I really should learn more of his Thin Lizzy stuff, considering like he played Marshalls during that. So something else that I wanted to go over real quick, and then we'll go direct into the Boss Katana. So let me show you. I wanted to show the inside of this. I'm trying to amp off so you don't get a nasty squeak. So, kind of how I mentioned with a Plexi, a lot of the sound is going to be that that power amp and transformer saturation. And so with this pedal, I really wanted it to have that. A lot of Plexi pedals, they just do the preamp. And I mean, there's only 2 gain stages in a Plexi pedal, unless you add the Jose, which is 3. I mean, that's not even JCM 800. That's like Fender Twin. That's Deluxe Reverb and whatnot. And I mean, those are known as being cleaner amps. So I mean, 2 gain stages is really not going to get you anything if you just do the preamp. So that's where we actually put in the power amp, and the power amp is a lot of this thing, or a lot of the sound of this. So you have a couple of preamp JFETs, so those are like the preamp tubes, and this is all pretty much the same as what's in the actual Plexi. It's really when you get into like this section where the magic happens. So I just use a standard, just TL072, which is just a standard op amp. That's what's in the Klon. That's what's in most drive pedals these days. It's in the Angry Charlie. It's in the Marshall Governor. Basically anything that's not Boss is going to use these Texas Instruments. Anyway, but you can see this other big guy in here. This is an actual audio output transformer. So whenever you crank the gain on this, you're feeding volume into this output transformer. So that's where you're getting that saturation and that just kind of chewy. There's like a sparkliness that was not there whenever I took this out, because I did a lot of A/B testing back and forth to see if this actually made a difference, and it definitely does, in the same way that it would in a Marshall Plexi. Something else that we have here, it doesn't really come across too well on the camera. Well, I guess you can see it, is the notorious bright cap in volume. That's really what made Plexi just unbearably bright in whenever they were at lower volumes. And so we've put that on a switch. If you want to have the bright cap, you can have it on, you can have it off. And then there's also another Jose mod that, so I mentioned Eddie Van Halen ran his amp stock, really didn't have anything done until later years. So about 1984, maybe it was the album before that. It might have been Diver Down, I can't remember. Where he did have what was called a deep mod. It was just a simple 200 microfarad cap added across the third gain stage cathode resistor. All these like amp nerds, any amp nerds that are listening to this are like, oh my gosh, like yes, because I studied amps before, like long before I got into pedals. So sorry if I'm like way too nerdy on this. But we have that deep mod on there. So this kind of gives you a little bit more of the later Van Halen tone. So like more 1984. So I played Panama with it out. So it technically should be in, but it's whatever. Neutrik jacks, true bypass relay switching. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of the inside goodies. You also have a power amp knob. I really wouldn't touch this, if I'm being honest. This will add more gain, but I've got really high output pickups, and if you're running this with the JB or with EMGs or anything like that that's really high output, this is going to be a good setting. I would only turn this up if you regularly play with a Telecaster or a Strat or just a really low output thing, just because otherwise, I mean, this thing's already got a ton of gain in it. You run that up a little bit more, it could overload the pedal. You do get a squeal or whatever, just roll that back. But stock shouldn't be a problem. Like I said, everything has been finely tuned for you guys. You shouldn't have to do anything. It's just going to come really good out of the box. Just, you've been warned if you decide to mess with it. But there it is. This is I'd like to think the last plexi pedal you'd ever have to buy. It looks good too. Llano Estacado, for those Texans that know, is far west Texas. It's Cortez called it the Llano Estacado, the staked plains or the palisaded plains, and it kind of that's where I first discovered Van Halen. I went to Texas Tech University out in Lubbock on the Llano Estacado, and that's really where I discovered Van Halen for the first time, and actually started playing guitar, a little later in life in college. But that's where I learned. And Jose Orlando, actually, whenever he was modding amps, he was actually doing it out of his shop in Pacific Palisades. So there's kind of, Pacific Palisades, Palisaded Plains. Also on Texas Tech's campus, there was going to be the original artwork for this, but I decided against it. So on Texas Tech campus, there's actually a statue of Will Rogers riding off into the sunset, and any Los Angeles natives know that off of fairly close to the Sunset Strip, off of Sunset Boulevard, there is the homestead of Will Rogers. So there's another kind of tie-in between West Texas and Los Angeles, and that's represented with the name Llano Estacado. I really wanted to bring those two worlds together the same way that my inspiration, or me being inspired by Van Halen, really led me down this path. Let's give it a try. On the Katana, just settings, just straight up. Get gain low on the clean channel, obviously. It's gonna be loud, so I'm gonna. So kind of like I mentioned, this is a brighter amp, so we'll roll this down a little bit. So you can see, sounds good there too. Well, I think that'll about do it. I don't think I saw any questions in the chat. Hopefully I nerded it out enough for you guys. So this is a Llano Estacado. Very proud of it. I think probably the best, like I said, best plexi you can get. Made it that way on purpose. If you guys have any questions, you can always email us at dosriosaudio.com, where you can buy these. They are currently $199.99, made in the USA. I'm a small one-man operation, and happy to answer any other questions that you have. You can just email me at dosriosaudio@gmail.com. More designs coming out soon, so if you guys have any suggestions or anything else that you'd like to hear or see from us in the future, just let us know. Thank you everybody for joining, and hope y'all have a good night. All right.